Good morning, everyone. We are now in Mishnah's Meiser Sheni, Perek Gimel, Chapter 3, Mishnah Yud Gimel, Mishnah 13. Now, yesterday's Mishnah, we learned that if you have sealed containers of Truma, of Tevel, you cannot separate Truma from one barrel for the others. If you want to separate Truma from one pile for another, they have to be near each other. But if we're talking about that the containers are already closed, then that already separates the wine. They're not considered next to each other anymore, and therefore you cannot take truma from one for the other. But now the Mishnah continues. Now, what happens if you have that kind of a case and you still want to do it? You still want to be able to separate from one of the containers for the other containers. What do? Beis Shammai say, the Academy of Shammai say, Mefateach uma'ara lagas. You have to open up the barrels and pour them all back into the wine press. Not enough just to open them. In yesterday's Mishnah, before you close them, we said that you could separate from one container for the other container. If the tops are not there, the wines are considered together, mixed, because one container was lost amongst the other ones. One Truma container was lost amongst the other ones. If you have 100 units of non-Truma to the Truma wine, then that would be able to nullify it. You could have it all. I'm mixing up two things. Sorry about that. If the containers are open, they're considered next to each other enough that you could separate Truma from one for the others. But once the containers become closed, they're separated. In order to separate Truma from one thing, from one pile for another, it has to be minamukaf. They have to be near each other. Once the containers are sealed, they're separated. They're not considered next to each other. So Beis Shammai say, if you open up the barrel, if you reopen up the containers, so even though originally if they were open, they would have been considered next to each other, and you could have separated Truma from one for the other. Once you closed it, and now you want to make them considered near each other again, it's not enough to open up the container. You have to pour out the contents of the container back into the wine press all together, and then you separate from one for the other. Beis Hillel say, all you got to do is open up the containers. You don't need to pour it out. The same way to start off with, they were considered near each other. If the containers were open, you can make them be considered again next to each other just by opening up the barrels. That's the first section of this Mishnah. A lot of different sections to this Mishnah. I mean, there could be a few different sections to this Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah goes back to what we had in yesterday's Mishnah, that if you have Tevel wine that needs Meiser Sheni to be separated from it or declared, or that the wine should be declared Meiser Sheni, and you put it into the sealed barrel, into a barrel that was closed. You put the wine that was not declared Meiser Sheni into a container, you close the container, and then you declared the wine inside of it to be Meiser Sheni. We said the entire container becomes Meiser Sheni. A closed container is now considered one unit with the wine, and therefore it's now subordinate to the wine, that when you declare the wine Meiser Sheni, the subordinate container also gets the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni. But that Mishnah says, when do we say that? Mishnah is going to qualify that. In a place where the practice is to sell the wine in the containers while the containers are closed. There are places where the way they sell wine is the containers are open, you take out the wine from the containers and you sell the wine. In some places, though, they sell it by the container. So in a case where they sell the wine with the container, then we say the closed container is considered one unit with the wine, subordinate to the wine. And then when you declare the wine Meiser Sheni, the container will also now take on the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni. Avol, however, now here the Mishnah is going to tell us what happens when when we're talking about a place where the barrels are sold open, but it doesn't directly address what we were speaking about. It actually goes back to a different halach, a different law that we discussed earlier, repeats it, and based on that, we are to figure out what is going to be the situation when you have a closed container, but it's in a place where the wine isn't typically sold closed. But in a place where the practice is typically to sell open, meaning you don't sell the container with it. You sell the wine. You have the containers are open. You take the wine out of the container and sell the wine by itself. You don't typically sell it with the container. In that situation where let's say I were to decide, I go over and I say, I want to buy the container with the wine. So then the halacha is, just to read it words of the Mishnah, liyatza kan lechulin, then the barrel, the container rather, is not considered chulin. So this is going back to a different discussion from before. Before there was a discussion like this. If you're in a place where the wine is sold in closed containers, and when we're talking about using Meiser Sheni money to buy the wine, that's the case. That's the case the Mishnah is really referring back to. Not talking about the discussion of our Mishnah is going to be continuing in the case where you declare the wine in the container Meiser Sheni, but what's being quoted here is not that halacha. It's going back to a previous discussion, which was you have Meiser Sheni money. We know that when you take the Meiser Sheni money and you buy food with it, the money gets transferred for the money onto the food. The Mishnah was discussing what happens when you buy a container of wine. Does the container, meaning, does the container get the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni money? So he said like this: if it's in a place where you sell, that the practice is to sell the container with the wine, so then we see the container comes along with the wine, but your focus is the wine, not the container. The container is basically what you hold the wine in. But the container goes along with the wine. That's typically how the sale is made. But your intention when you're spending the Meiser Sheni money is on the wine. And therefore, only the wine becomes sanctified. The sanctity of the Meiser Sheni money goes onto the wine, not onto the container. But in a place where the practice is not to sell the container with the wine, the containers are open, they take out the wine and sell the wine separately. In that case, where you decide to buy the container with the wine, whether the container is open or whether the container is closed, there we say, since the container typically doesn't go along with the wine, that means now you decided to purchase two things: wine and the container, and using the Meiser Sheni money. And since the Meiser Sheni money works for the wine, because that is what you use Meiser Sheni money for food, and since in this sale, you're selling two things at once, the container and the wine, we don't look at the container as just going along with the wine, because typically the container isn't sold with the wine. Now that you're buying the container with the wine, you're buying two things. And you're using Meiser Sheni for both. Typically, you can't use a Meiser Sheni with things that are in food. But here, once I'm using it for food, the Meiser Sheni money will be going on the barrel also. That's being sold together at the same time. And in that situation, the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni money will transfer onto the barrel. Because in that situation, the barrel and the wine are not one thing, they're two things. Consequently, getting back to our case, if you're dealing with a situation, again, in a place where the barrel isn't sold together with the wine, so the barrel doesn't go along with the wine, it's two separate things, they're not subordinate to the wine, even if it's closed, in that case, when you sanctify, in the case, now getting back to our Mishnah, in that kind of situation where you had wine that was tevel in the closed container and you sanctified that wine, you designated that wine to be Meiser Sheni, although the container is closed, since it's in a place where the container and the wine don't typically go together, they're two separate things. The container is not subordinate to the wine, that when you sanctify the one as Meiser Sheni, that sanctification should go on the barrel also. So that's what it means, in a place where the practice is to sell the wine from open barrels. When you use Meiser Sheni money to buy it, then the halacha is that the wine, that the container isn't chulin, it's sanctified because it's two separate things. So to here, once we see the two separate things, making the Ma'aser Sheni wine, making that wine in the container, closed container, Ma'aser Sheni won't affect, that declaration won't go on to the container, because the container is not subordinate to the wine. Okay, now, being that we just mentioned, we went back to that halacha about that when I'm using Ma'aser Sheni money to buy a container with wine, we said that where the practice is not to sell them together, and you did buy them together, that there the Ma'aser Sheni money that was used to purchase the wine is purchasing the container also, and therefore the container takes on the sanctity of the Ma'aser Sheni from that money. Here we're going to qualify that. Let's say you decided, okay. Just 1 second. Okay. So now, the Mishna says like this. In that case, again, where it's typically open, it's typically sold in open containers. And we say there that when you spend the Ma'aser Sheni money on the container with the wine, that there the halacha is that you bought both. And it's considered a separate sale it's a sale for the container and for the wine. And therefore the sanctity of the Ma'aser Sheni money goes on the container also. That is only going to be in a situation where you actually sold the entire jug. Meaning, when you're selling this container, if you're selling the container already, you're going to sell the entire contents of it. Or perhaps, the way they say it down here is generally wine was sold by the jug or barrel, which means even if you're not selling the jug along with it, that's typically what it was sold by. You basically, you buy the entire contents of the container, even if, typically the container's not sold with it, which means you're taking it out of the container when you sell it, but typically it's sold by the jug or the barrel, by the container. But if let's say this seller decides to be more exacting, doesn't mean here strict, means exacting on himself, to sell by measure, meaning by amount, not selling by jug or by container. He's selling it by measure, by ounces, by whatever liquid measure you want to talk about. So again, you're selling, what's happening here is that you're telling the person, I'm selling you 10 ounces of wine from this jug. Talking about the case of Ma'aser Sheni money, you have Ma'aser Sheni money, you're buying something with it, okay? And you're buying the container, you're buying the container along with the wine. But basically, you're working with a very precise measurement, okay? You gave an exact measurement to the container. Then I'm telling you how much I'm selling you. Okay, meaning, okay, I'm just trying to put this together now. Just coming to me. What's happening is you're buying the entire contents of the container. That's why the container is coming along. But instead of saying I'm selling you what the container is worth, I'm basically telling you, I'm telling you the measurement. I tell you I'm selling you 10 ounces, because that's the contents here. The contents of this wine, of this container, the amount of wine in this container is X amount. And that's what I'm selling you. I'm selling you the whole thing, but I'm more exact in my sale. I say I'm selling you the 10 ounces of wine in this container. Now it's understood you want the container also, but I'm telling you that I'm selling you the 10 ounces of the container. In that situation, we say, Yatsa Kankan L'chulin. Then the container is chulin. It's not considered sanctified. Although we said before that in a place where you don't typically sell the container with the wine, and you buy the container with the wine, and you're using Ma'aser Sheni money to buy it, it's considered two separate purchases. In this case, where the seller says, I'm selling you this measure of wine that's in this container, then that means the sale is on the wine. The container is a gift. So even though at the end of the day, you're selling him the whole contents, but if you're exact in your sale, you say, I'm selling you these 10 ounces of wine, then that means the sale is on the wine. The container that you asked for, I'm letting you take it along, but there was no purchase of it. And therefore, it does not take on the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni money that was used to purchase it, used to purchase the wine. Now we go back again to the case of where, where wine, when you go ahead and you have wine in a container and you sanctify the wine in the container as Meiser Sheni, that sanctification of the wine goes on the container also, okay? Which we said that before. It's in a place where you go ahead and the wine is typically sold in a closed container, the container is subordinate, and therefore we said that when you sanctify the contents of the wine inside the container as Meiser Sheni, that the container also takes on the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni declared on the wine. Here's a qualification. Reb Shimon says, Af ha'omer l'chaveroi. Just 1 second. Right, okay. The case here is like this. The case here is, right, I'm sorry, there's the Mishna doesn't mention this part, but this is the main part of what the Mishna is saying. The case now that the Mishna is discussing is you had a closed container, but you didn't declare all the contents as Meiser Sheni. You went ahead and you said everything in it should be Meiser Sheni except for some amount of the wine in there. Most of the wine you declared to be Meiser Sheni. Some of it is now going to remain chulin. That's the case. You filled when you filled the container. It wasn't Meiser Sheni. You closed it. It's a place where you sell the container with the wine, so it's one unit. It's subordinate to the wine. But when you declared the Meiser Sheni on the wine, all you did was you didn't sanctify all the wine, most of the wine, and some of it you left chulin. So Reb Shimon says, Af ha'omer l'chaveroi. Even where a person says to his friend, I'm selling you this wine. Chutz mi. I'm selling you this wine. Chutz mi kankanim. Except for the barrel. Okay, he's stipulating, right? The person wants to purchase this wine. Wants to purchase the wine. He really wants to purchase the chulin wine. That's the case. I'm selling you the chulin wine, and I'm selling you this wine. I'm selling you the chulin wine, and I'm not giving you the barrel. Right. There's chulin, as we said. The case is there's Meiser Sheni. You declared most of the wine in the container to be Meiser Sheni. Part of you left chulin. You are now the Meiser Sheni, you're selling the chulin wine to this person. You're telling him, I sell you this chulin wine, but I'm not giving you the barrel because I need the barrel to hold on to the rest of the wine, which is Meiser Sheni. Which means it's very clear this person wants this barrel to be subordinate to the wine. Yatsa kankan l'chulin. The container is chulin. Even though the wine was in the container, closed, when you declared the wine to be Meiser Sheni. In this case, where you didn't declare all of it Meiser Sheni, the declaration of sanctification of wine as Meiser Sheni does not go onto the barrel. The only time it goes onto the barrel is when you declare all the wine Meiser Sheni. When all the wine is Meiser Sheni, so then the barrel is subordinate to all this wine, which is Meiser Sheni. The declaration you make on the wine to make it Meiser Sheni will go on the barrel. But if you did not make all the wine, even if you made most of the wine, Meiser Sheni, and you want the barrel for that Meiser Sheni wine, but since you didn't declare the entire contents of the barrel to be Meiser Sheni, then this barrel, although theoretically it is subordinate to the wine, the declaration that you make on the wine to Meiser Sheni will not go onto the barrel since you didn't declare all the contents of the barrel to be Meiser Sheni, which means the barrel is not completely subordinate to Meiser Sheni. To some degree, it's subordinate to part of it that's not Meiser Sheni, and therefore the declaration of Meiser Sheni only goes on the wine and doesn't go on the barrel. We're now in Klal Daled, the fourth chapter of the Chavetz Chaim, of the Sefer Chavetz Chaim and the laws of Lashon Harah, paragraph Yud Beis, paragraph 12. If a person did speak Lashon Harah about someone else, uva la'asais tshuva toli bazeh, and now he wants to do tshuva, wants to repent. So it depends. What does he have to do? It's going to depend. If let's say you spoke Lashon Hara about someone to others, and they completely rejected what you said, and therefore this person was not degraded, was not defamed in any way whatsoever, which means it's clear you caused no harm to this person you spoke about. So now what happens is the only thing left upon you is the sin between you and Hashem. Hashem commanded us not to speak Lashon Hara. You're not going to speak Lashon Hara. If it didn't affect someone, okay, so you didn't sin against someone. You only sinned towards God. And therefore, you have to now do tshuva for transgressing the will of God. Tikunai, so what do? You go through the process of tshuva. You regret what you did in the past. V'yisvada, you confess, v'yikabel atzma b'leiv shalom, and you accept wholeheartedly al haba for the future not to do so. Like by all sins between man and God. This is the tshuva process. You have to have regret, you have to confess, and you have to commit to the future regarding the future that you're not going to return to the sin. But let's say he was negatively affected by the Lashon Hara you spoke. These people now look down at him. And it caused damage to him. Begufai, bodily, financially, or it caused him distress. These people, went in and said, oh, we heard, that you did this. And this now causes him distress. It may not necessarily, they're not going to harm him for it, that he's not going to lose his livelihood because of it, but he's distressed over the fact that people are looking down upon him. Now, this now becomes a sin, like other sins between a man and his friend, like stealing from someone. Where the Talmud teaches us that even Yom Kippur and the Day of Death do not atone until you gain forgiveness from your friend. Therefore, you have to go over to your friend and ask him for forgiveness. And if the person is appeased and forgives, you're still, so now that's the aspect of a sin between man and his fellow and his friend, that's been taken care of because he's forgiven you. And now what's left is the fact that you still transgress the will of God and v'yasa kanal, and you have to go through the process of tshuva, of regret, confession, and to accept for on the future. Here the Chavetz Chaim tells us something very interesting. And even if, let's say, the friend doesn't know about it, he's not aware of any damage that came to him. The damage happened. He was, let's say, people will look down at him because of it. But he doesn't know. You have to reveal to him what you did. And to ask him for forgiveness. You know what you did to him. You know what you caused to him. He doesn't know it yet, but you know it. You know what you did. So if you want forgiveness, you need to reveal. You need to let him know what you did. This really should give us a tremendous understanding of how important it is to stay away from speaking Lashon Hara. Because let's say somebody habitually speaks Lashon Hara. How is he ever going to do tshuva, repent for what he did? He can't keep track of all the people that he caused pain to through the Lashon Hara he spoke. And even let's say people he does realize what the bad that he spouted on them. They don't realize it. Therefore, he's going to be embarrassed to tell it to them. And then sometimes, again, people who habitually speak Lashon Hara can speak about a family blemish, which means they can speak about something, some kind of blemish in the family, let's say in their lineage. And when you go ahead and you basically speak badly about someone's lineage, that can be not just a blemish in the present, it's going to v'yazik b'zeh kol hadaris habayim acharav. That could be a blemish that's going to last for generations. And you're not going to get forgiveness for that. If you speak about a blemish, a lineage blemish in a family, then you can't gain atonement for that, because that can be something that harms generations. Therefore, a person has to be very careful to keep far away from this very bad trait, so that he doesn't come, God forbid, it's a situation of a wrongdoing that he can't rectify, that he can't make up for. And therefore, so again, you want to atone for Lashon Hara when you cause some kind of a hurt to someone. You have to ask for forgiveness. And sometimes the hurt that you cause can be the kind of hurt that you're not going to be able to make up for. And therefore, that really teaches us in a very powerful way to stay away from speaking Lashon Hara. Have a wonderful day.